about 15 to 20 minutes of your time. And it's probably going to be the most circumference route as to the, quote, mission of Toys for Tots that you've ever heard. But I hope that at the end it'll all make sense and it'll come crystal clear. I had to start off with one caveat, and that's a hand and arm signal. Anytime you see me go like this and put my head down, it means just bear with me. All right? That'll make sense as we go along here. First of all, like most Marines, unlike the ones you see in the news these days, I don't like to talk about myself, and I don't like to talk about my bio. Because driving up from Indianapolis, throwing on this ridiculous costume with all this crap on it, okay? Really, everything that I wear here, none of it represents anything that I did. It represents the fact that I was fortunate and blessed to be surrounded by unbelievable mentors and, more importantly, the young enlisted Marines who did the nasty deeds that had to be done, that I got the recognition for. And I wouldn't even wear this stuff if it wasn't for them. So I want to be crystal clear on that. So let me talk about my bio for a second. I have 32 years, I'm retired. I had 32 years total service to the Marine Corps Reserve, 18 of which was on active duty. It included multiple combat deployments, and my entire time in the United States Marine Corps, I was in the operating forces. So I was either training for combat, or I was deployed, or I was in combat operations. The 14 years that I wasn't, I was an Indiana State Trooper. Now I tell you those things because I want to let you know what that did to me as a human being, because we all know a big part of who we are is what we do, whether we want to admit that or not. And so in my world, what I was basically an angry, embittered, and culturally detached person. That was just the world I lived in. I was very comfortable with the sound of bolts slamming bullets into chambers. I was very comfortable with the sound of gunfire. I was very comfortable with the sound of explosions. I spoke a language that was better used on a radio and in ward rooms than in a room like this. I didn't say, okay, I said, roger that. I didn't go to the bathroom, I went to the head. I mean, that was just the world that I lived in. And because of that world, and because of what I saw, you tend to become a pretty bitter person, because I was constantly dealing with the ugliest parts of human existence. But the reality was, I lived in a world where force and violence was part of the equation in the daily struggle between good and evil. That's just what I did. And it also very much became who I am. And bear in mind that in both of those occupations, but particularly in this one, death was always a constant companion. It was always there, it was always lurking, it was always watching, and it was always mocking you. Because when you're a professional warrior, you don't think of death in the way most people think of death. You think of death as loss, because it means you made a mistake. You did something wrong. Because in my world, everything is analysis and evaluation from a tactical perspective. It's about winning. It's about surviving. It's about being victorious. I mean, you all would probably think I'm nuts, but as soon as I walk in a room like this, or like this happens, I go to that door. If this person pulls a knife, I do this. If that person does a gun, I do this. Again, that's just the world that you live in, and it takes over your mind. So that's where I was at. Now let me talk about Toys for Tots for just a second. Living in that world, originally, my association with Toys for Tots was as an officer, I had to run the daggum Toys for Tots program at my reserve unit. We had to get the toys, we had to sponsor events like this, we had to distribute them. To my way of thinking, it was a daggum interference, okay? It was an unnecessary distraction that took us away from doing what we should have been doing so that Marines didn't suffer death because they weren't prepared. Okay, that was my mindset on the other side of this at the time. All right, I'm going to point something else out. I've been a commander, company, battalion, 4 times. In the reserve, you have a requirement as a commander to interview every single Marine that joins your unit. And because I was not a fan of Toys for Tots, I did something that most officers didn't do. I had a standard interview sheet, most of them had that, but I had a question that most of them didn't have. And I'd ask every Marine, we're talking probably over my career, probably close to 1,000. I was trying to do the math last night. It's probably close to 1,000. And I asked every one of them, why did you join the Marine Corps? Now, I had a very specific psychological reason for wanting to ask them that, okay? But one of the reasons, and I'm not going to lie, is I wanted to know if I was ever going to hear one of them say, well, you know, because when I was 8 years old and I didn't have anything, man, the Marines gave me a toy. I mean, I just one time wanted to hear somebody say, that's why they joined the Marine Corps. Now, I'm going to tell you, never happened. Not once did I ever have a Marine look at me. There were probably some, they didn't want to admit it. But not once did I ever have a young hard charger go, oh, sir, I joined the Marine Corps because they gave me a freaking toy when nobody else would. So another reason I kind of had an edge towards the Toys for Tots program. So now's where it's going to get circumference, okay? So bear with me. So why is a guy like me, angry and bitter, grouchy, curmudgeon, talking bad about Toys for Tots, why is he possibly standing in front of this group and talking to you? All right, we're going to get to that, all right? But I want to read something to you because it's going to drive home how we're going to tie this together. Some of you may have heard of this. Some of you may not. Even if you have, it's so good you're going to want to hear it again. But it's a little story that was showed up in a magazine in 1982, and it's called The White Envelope. It'll take me about 2 minutes to read. Just bear with me. It was just a small white envelope stuck among the branches of our Christmas tree. No name, no ID, no inscription. It had peeked through the branches of our tree for the past 10 years. It all began because my husband Mike hated Christmas. Oh, not the true meaning of Christmas, but the commercial aspects of it, overspending and the frantic running around, the last minute to get a tie for uncle and the dusting powder for grandma, gifts given in desperation because you couldn't think of anything else. Knowing that he felt this way, I decided one year to bypass the usual shirts, sweaters, ties, and so forth. I reached for something special just for Mike, and the inspiration came in a very unusual way. Our son Kevin, who was 12 that year, was on the wrestling team at the school he attended. Shortly before Christmas, there was a non-league match against a team sponsored by an inner-city church. These youngsters, dressed in sneakers so ragged that shoestrings seemed to be the only thing holding them together, presented a sharp contrast to our boys in their spiffy red and black uniforms and sparking new wrestling shoes. As the match began, I was alarmed to see that the other team was wrestling without headgear, a kind of light helmet designed to protect a wrestler's ears. It was a luxury the opposing team could not afford. Well, we ended up wallowing them. We took every weight class. Mike, seated next to me, shook his head sadly and said, I wish just one of them could have won. They have lots of potential, but losing like this could take the heart right out of them. Mike loved kids. All kids. He so enjoyed kids that he coached Little League football, baseball, and lacrosse. That's when the idea for his present came. That afternoon, I went to a local sporting goods store and I bought an assortment of wrestling headgear and shoes. I sent them anonymously to the inner city church. On Christmas Eve, I placed a small white envelope on the tree, the note inside telling Mike what I had done. And that was his gift for me. Mike's smile was the brightest thing about Christmas that year. And that same bright smile lit up succeeding years for each Christmas. I followed the tradition. One year sending a group of mentally handicapped youngsters to a hockey game. Another year a check to a group of elderly brothers whose home had burned down to the ground the week before Christmas, and so on. The white envelope became the highlight of our Christmas. It was always the last thing opened on Christmas morning. And our children, ignoring their toys, would stand with wide-eyed anticipation as their dad lifted the envelope from the tree to reveal its contents. The story doesn't end there. You see, we lost Mike last year due to cancer. When Christmas rolled around, I was wrapped in grief. But Christmas Eve found me placing an envelope on the tree. And the next morning, I found it was magically joined by 3 more. Unbeknownst to the others, each one of our children, for the first time, placed a white envelope on the tree for their dad. It looks like this family tradition will continue. See, all those things I told you about me, they changed. Because in 2012, I was diagnosed with cancer. Out of nowhere. Something happened. And it wasn't physical. I was open to a world I didn't know existed. It was a world of charity. It was a world of people doing things solely out of the goodness of their hearts. People that didn't know me and that wouldn't like me very well if they did were going out of their way to help me. See, that's what charity is. And it's transformative. It'll change everything about you. So when I was first diagnosed, I've always been, I like to consider myself a religious man, but it stopped being an intellectual exercise and it started being a spiritual one. And having dodged death so many times, I didn't care about death. I just simply said, all right, I'll never ask why, just tell me what for. And I got my answer. And my answer was I had to be more like you. And a lot less like me. See, because charity is ultimately the best example of what you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me. Because you don't have to do it. There's no reward in it. There's no pat on the back. There's nothing. But you do it simply because it's the right thing and you care about people. And it's a different way of caring than I had ever known. But the answer I got is you've got to be more like them and less like yourself. See, I'm 4.5 years into my battle. As a matter of fact, I drive back to Indianapolis tomorrow morning. I get an evaluated CT scan because I'm in my 5th round of treatment. All's good. Nobody's put a death sentence on me yet. Nobody needs to say anything about it after this. But you needed to know where I'm coming from. Because that's why I'm here talking to you tonight. Because what you do at an event like this is far more than providing a toy. See, when that kid gets that toy, it's going to open up a lot more than just joy. It's going to open up curiosity. Who would do this for me and why? And that's going to change their heart. See, because I had a heart of stone. And in the process of charity, it got broken. But here's the finish. If I could relive the last 4.5 years without the radiation and all the freaking chemo, 2 surgeries, loss of half one lung, an artificial shoulder, would I? No. Not if I had to give back what I've learned. I would not take that deal. Because for a long time, for 48 years, I immersed myself in the ugliness of human existence. And I'm proud to have done it because I think I did it for the right reason. But for the last 4.5, I've seen the best of human existence. I did not like Toys for Tots, and it used to aggravate the crap out of me that the Marine Corps was associated with it. Now I see it as one of the finest organizations in the world, and I'm damn proud to wear this uniform and be associated with it. So if I can see this, through my tears and forgetting my daggum reading glasses, Before I give this blessing to you all, I'd just like to say, as you go through the night, just please bear in mind, if you think this is nothing but giving a toy, remember you watched what some people would tell you is a badass Marine reduced to a sobbing mess. Okay? So charity is a lot more than giving a toy. And so I'm going to speak for all the people that will never thank you and simply say, if I can, jeez. May Jesus comfort you in all your afflictions. May he protect you in all your dangers. May he wrap you in his grace. May he show you the safe path that leads to eternal salvation. And may he always render you closer to his divine heart and always more worthy of paradise. Amen, and God bless you all.